G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute, and today I'm joined by my partner in crime, Mr. Dasein. Now, this episode came about from we were reading Spectrum, which we don't often do very often, and there was a couple of comments talking about the lack of content coming out of CIG regarding subscribers. Talking about not thinking they were getting enough for their money and things like that. So we actually wanted to go through and look at also not just what they're doing, but why they're possibly doing it. And what we're hoping to do here is just get some information out about why it's happening and possibly if they can fix it and things like that. So I think we'll start out with the basics, and we'll just go why is there a lack of content from CIG at the moment? And I'll let you kick it off, Dasein.
Well, right now, if you look at what's going on, there has been a huge drought. And it's not like the normal drought that we get. They've cut the length of their episodes. The amount of information coming out is next to nothing. The developer interviews have pretty much completely dried up. There used to be Ben's Day with Batgirl.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that was, Ben Lesnick was on, and just all this stuff.
They were meant to be bringing us a system so we could actually make bookings and appointments to have them on shows, and this was 12 months ago, and that's gone, dead in the water. Never heard anything more about it. So yeah, I think the thing that kind of also brought this to my attention before it was even posted is doesn't affect us a terrible lot because we do a lot of speculation, but I'm just going to call Board Gamer out here a little bit. You can even see it in his shows particularly, and other content creators. They are struggling for content, and it's not, it is that time of year. This is usually the quietest time of year, but also I think this year in particular as a whole, as we'll get to in a little bit, is going to probably be one of the worst years for dry content.
Well, it's affecting us as well because, again, you can't theory craft without information. And with all the... Now that we don't even have our Monday show, Calling All Devs, we have lost a whole bunch of content that you can talk about, and it's next to impossible to do anything except for gameplay now.
Yeah. We'll talk about those some of the shows and stuff, I think, at the end, because I actually think there are some shows that they need to bring back, and I think there are obviously room for some new shows and stuff like that as well. But, so I think we'll go through the lack of content as content creators is very hard, but I think the other people it's really hard for is subscribers. And I've never been a subscriber for a very long particular part of time. I would only ever subscribe when I'm particularly after a flare item because I didn't find the book interesting, and I'm talking about Jump Point. I didn't find the perks of any interest. I disagreed with a lot of the shows they were doing. I disagreed with who's on the shows a lot of the time. I disagreed with a lot of the time wasting that was on the shows. But it's obviously not going to be for everyone. And obviously I know there's a lot of people out there that really like the shows. Hell, I would pay money just for the shows if they were good enough. And I think that's where the concern's starting to come about now, is the fact that they've got so short, we're talking 8 minutes.
Yep.
And a part of that at the moment is that they're showing a video that usually goes for 2 minutes at the start of some community content that we've all already seen or don't care about in most
Or
cases.
they're just sitting here going, yada, 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 playing jokes back and forth. And I'm like, I'm not wanting to see your filler. I want to see what's going on with the game. We are one of the few.
I just want to finish that I don't hate those community content videos, but there's a time and a place. Sorry, you just left me there hanging like I was a complete asshole. I don't hate them. I just don't think they're the right place for them. I just want to make that clear. So
he is, but not for those reasons.
Yeah. But look, I totally agree with you too. There's a lot of filler in those shows, and for a show that's so short, why is there even any filler? That thing should be 100% pure content, and it's not. Yeah. And I think we need to kind of move on to the reasons why. Well, and I think it's a multi-stage answer. But sorry, go ahead.
I did want to add, I mean, with all the filler, this is the type of stuff they've been giving us all along, but it's all down to cutting the content out of the way, and we are the only community that I know of that will take what anyone else out there considers absolutely, completely, and totally mind-numbingly boring and be like, tell me more.
What was that episode about building the schedules or something? And it was like the most popular RTV they've ever done. And they thought that was going to be stupid and laughable. You know, I've seen things where they've done, they built they were starting to build out the development concepts or just the pure little coding to show people of how he was building a basketball net on the Javelin and just the coding that was involved to get that working in the gameplay. I think it was the Lula code. And that was a really popular episode as well. So people want to learn how this game is made. And some of those, obviously, they don't have time to get people to make them. So I think there's two reasons about it. One is developer time. They can't get people to help them make those kind of behind-the-scenes show. But I think the bigger overlying thing is this massive need, and I think it's a little bit needless, and I will explain this in further, but you can agree or disagree with me, Dyson, is Squadron 42 and the need to keep it 100% a surprise. Because if you can show off some of the art, some of the gameplay mechanics, some of the ships, and how they were made, you know, like how did they make, you know, I remember they got people in to show how, like, they invented the signals, how to put people and send people off the ship. Why didn't they do an episode on that? That would have been really interesting for people that were into all that pilot stuff. You know, why don't they show more ships going right from concept right through the pipeline, all that type of stuff?
That's a big thing for me, because when I look at the ship episodes, when they do an episode after they release ship, they show all of this stuff. I would think it'd be way more interesting to actually see it as time goes on. Oh, hey, we are concepting this ship here, and here's some of the designs here, and as it goes on and on and on. And the cool thing is, not only does it show you the development process, but I feel like that would also build up the hype on the ship, because everyone would be like, ooh, cool, what is this thing?
100% agree with that.
What's going on? Oh, this is interesting. And you know what? I think even then it might be better for feedback, because, hey, we are like, oh, cool, we like this. We really like this. Then this is the time they can change it instead of after it's released.
Yeah, I think I'll mention that feedback stuff in a minute, because there is a little bit there I do want to talk about in regards to feedback. But what I just had this kind of weird epiphany moment just then. Them creating content for Star Citizen as a show is very similar to us making content for Star Citizen as a show. And we're not out of ideas, so how come they're out of ideas when they've got more ideas to play with than we do? You know, so I find that a little strange. Like, maybe they're just tired or burnt out. Maybe they need more staff. I don't know.
Well, development time, because the argument again goes back to you're taking a developer away from that. I'm like,
yeah,
do you really take the developer away from that when you could just put a camera there as they're working, and then have them occasionally, while they're working, just say, hey, this is what's going on here.
Wasn't that the whole appeal of calling all devs, so they didn't really interrupt them very much? They could just do it over Skype. That was one of the massive appeals of that show. But I really do come back to that need for secrecy of Squadron 42. Like, that. One of the things I find really interesting, they always talk about how it's open and transparent development. It is 100% open and transparent when it comes to Star Citizen. It is not 100% open and transparent when it comes to Squadron 42. I literally think we are seeing, like, and I've said this years ago, the tip of the iceberg is all we're actually seeing, because we only see what that is duly made for both, and then it comes in. It's like we're seeing a reflection. We're not actually seeing what's really being made. We're just seeing this overspill. And I think they can start to show us some of that, because otherwise it's going to come out and it's going to be this big fanfare, and it will be awesome, I have no doubt. But then it's going to die off quickly, where you could have fed little bits of it and it'll still be just as big a surprise, because that twist at the end that's going to happen, or the twist all the way through the storyline, we're never going to see that. But little bits all the way along.
The type of uniforms, maybe some of the interiors of the ships, or some of the designs or concepts around that's not going to spoil it. Like, if you look at some of the capital ships that have a lot of work on them, that's just gonna build hype. Like, just because I see what the ship looks like does not make it.
How many times have we seen the inside of the
Spoiler.
Idris now, and they talk about how they don't want us to have it because they want it to be a surprise, but we've seen all the way through it. Like, what? I don't get it. Like, you know, and I don't understand how that affects the story. And I know some people want that whole experience to be a surprise, but the other part of it is people are leaking this shit as soon as it's Evocati. And most of the first time I see a lot of stuff is when it's been leaked. Like, I don't get that CIG professional experience. Here is this I want to show you presented. I just get, here's a leaked grainy picture. Hope you enjoy. You know, like that's it's totally a different experience. Like, there is a need and a feed for information. Those leakers wouldn't be leaking if CIG wasn't presenting this shit properly. And you can turn around and say a leaker's going to leak, but they're leaking because people want it.
Spoilers. Spoilers do not matter to people who do not want spoilers, because all you have to do is, oh, there's spoilers on this RTV episode. Jump to this timestamp if you don't want to see it. Yeah. I mean, spoiling the end of the campaign, things like that, the story itself, I understand not releasing that. But again, the side content about that's literally not going to spoil anything, really.
Yeah. So let's get on to why CIG is doing this, and why we're going to have a kind of lack of information this year. And I think the first one is, well, like what you were saying before about the feedback. There is just too much information. Like, if you look at Spectrum as a whole, as an example, there is just too much. There is too much information to sift through. And even if every idea was a good idea, it's still too much. And let's be honest, a lot of us are back chair developers, and our ideas are not that great, right? So you might get 1,000, I'm just ballparking here, you might get 1,000 people that leave comments or suggestions or feedback, and maybe 10 out of that 1,000, so 1%, is literally stuff that they would take on board and want to push forward into the game. That just takes way too much time. If you think of how many posts there'd be millions of posts on that Spectrum to sift through. Well, it'd be just an epic nightmare. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
The thing with feedback. Well, the thing with the feedback also feeds into the concept of too many people are getting, let's just put it this way bluntly, butthurt over some dev said something at some point in time, and now they're holding them to it when everyone knows it's a work in progress. Just because I think, and I'm working on this feature or this part of a ship to be like this now, doesn't mean that's the end goal, and that will be there, because goals change. Development is fluid. And they're getting sick and tired of people saying, well, so-and-so said this, you're not living up to this promise.
Yeah. Now, a really good example of that in our grid, I'm throwing you under the bus a little bit here, buddy, but go with me, is our grids are really, at the moment, totally hates what happened to that Phoenix. But I always come back to that thing that they have on every single page, and I wish I could bring up an image right now and show it, but every single page, when you buy a ship, it says, this is a pledge, note that this game is in active development, blah, 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 blah. Things are subject to change. And that's what I see it. Like, that maybe it was on that day when that person said, this ship is going to be the best ship in the game ever, it was true. It doesn't mean it'll be true 2 days later. And there are so many moving parts in a development company that sometimes the tail does not know what the head is doing, and vice versa. So you have to have some what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you just need to
have flexibility.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry,
flexibility with it, because we aren't sure what you're pledging for. That's something that you really need to understand. We're never 100% sure what we're pledging for, because most of the times when you look at a game, they've already gone through this entire process, found out, well, this may be technologically infeasible, or hey, we have this new ship coming out here, or this new feature that we didn't think about, which changes the entire landscape, and we have to be flexible.
I think the part that I would add to that, because that's exactly what I was going to say, is faith. If you don't have enough faith in Chris Roberts and his vision, so to speak, of what they're going to make. And when they tell you that this ship is a tugboat, like the SRV as an example, you need to believe that that is his vision of what a tugboat would be, not what your vision of a tugboat would be. And that is I think that is the key difference. And you are more than welcome to throw suggestions at CIG, and if they happen to find it on the Spectrum C, because it would be like that, trying to find a message in a bottle, then awesome. And I really wish there was a way to put, like,
the Carrick feet.
I really wish there was a way to upvote some really good ideas, and I just don't think you can do it on Spectrum. It's one of the reasons I don't go there, because I want to give all these suggestions and stuff, but I know it's never going to get there, so I just don't.
It has gotten there. The Carrick's feet is a good example of that, and that's one of the rarities of those bottles being found. People saw the Carrick feet, didn't like it because it looks like the little wiener dog, and instead it got fixed.
I think the other thing with me personally, this is a total tangent to what we were just talking about, but we always do this, is I had a question this week. My question this week was, what's happened with the Reclaimer's cutter, and why haven't we heard anything about it? But no one else thinks like I do. Why would anyone else ask that question? That's just the way I think, you know. And I think that's the other part, is we all think different ways, and so when we put this feedback into CIG, there's just so much. I don't think they can possibly sift through all that. I think the other part of CIG is, like we said before, is with the Squadron 42. I think Chris Roberts really wants to keep that a surprise, and he's the developer of the game, and that the creator of the game, and that's what he wants, so that's what's going to happen. And unfortunately, I think because of that, we're just going to have a lack of content. And I think the last part that we've talked about here, I'll let you talk about this one, so go ahead.
Well, we already talked about this. So
we did?
Yeah, the broken promises.
Yep.
So now moving on, how would we fix this? And this is an important element because there's multiple different things, but one of the big ones is actually returning to some of that links. Maybe not as long, but actually giving us the content that we want. Even though it may look boring, people like that.
Yep.
And
I'm surprised they don't ask. Maybe that's a part of it too. Like when they asked for their feedback, no matter what it was. I do remember one year they did a survey on what shows we would like to see, and I actually reckon they've looked at it and gone, "Oh, it's all over the shop." I think they kind of did experiment there for a few years. Like I still think to this day the best show they ever did was The Next Great Starship. I tuned in every week. I came home, I sat down, had my dinner, and I sat there and watched it. Like, this is awesome. Like you know when you watch Star Trek or The Expanse or whatever your sci-fi show is that we all have. Obviously, if we play this game, we do that. I watched it like
they
that.
could do that with an actual concept ship. You know how they always pop up all those images like, hey, these are our options. What if they did that, but instead with in-house development when they actually have different images? I
actually reckon the biggest, like the reason why we never saw The Next Great Star Marine, if you really play it through in your head, it's really obvious, is by the time you brought those people up to learn how to use the ship pipeline or the character pipeline, it is quicker to hire them than it is to actually. So the whole reason, and that was why they did The Next Great Starship, they needed people that could make ships. And if you think about it, a lot of the people in The Next Great Starship got hired. You know, so that's why it never ever came about, because there's no need. But there is no reason you couldn't do a Next Great Starship concept ship, you know, and they could pick 100 entries and they could, you know, go through and whittle it down through a voting system, and then maybe the last 5, and they can pick the ones that they like or whatever, and we then pick one of those 5 and that will go into the game. That would be a really cool show. And then again, you could turn around the next year and do it again. You know, like, why not?
Well, or just do that with your concept ship designs. Have Chris Roberts look at like 20 different designs that they have for an already pre-selected manufacturer and ship, and then be like, "Hey, community, what do you like?" Boom.
Well, they did it really expensively though. They did it on a big stage and stuff like that. Why not get the community involved? Why not have, you know, hey, it could be you and me, Dyson. Why don't we do the first, you know, 3/4 of the show, and we get it nailed down to some really good ships, and then we hand it off to CIG, and you could just have, you know, Chris Roberts could look at him, and you could literally have Lando go, yeah, all right, so these are the ones that Chris has picked. You don't need to, you know, or you could just have Lando do the whole thing. I'm just trying to say, like, what I'm trying to say is there is ways you can do it for cheaper. And they don't need to have the big flashy stage and all that they had for that, because that actually cost a fair bit of money, because you actually had to have production to do that.
You just need a green screen, a camera,
yep,
and a computer.
But Chris is probably not always available. Like, coming back to that, developers not being available. But I'm sure he can respond to an email and look at some pictures and say, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one. You know, and then Lando goes, all right, so these are the ones that he's picked, and then he turns that into a story and a narrative, and says, you know, and if he really wants, he can get feedback from Chris, and Chris has given these feedback, and he likes this direction you're going in, and you could even have it so it's the next great concept team, and so you work in a team, and Chris guides them, and you see how he guides them up and through, and you know,
well, it would be very interesting to actually see what his thought process of some of these concepts, because we can only speculate when we say, hey, this is CIG's idea of luxury. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just what we assume based off of what we see. It'd be nice to actually understand the actual thought process going on.
Yeah. Obviously, I think in regards to ATV, I think we need to actually start seeing some more, art from Squadron 42, so I'm talking like arts, ships, gameplay mechanics, AI, all that type of stuff, and we are seeing that a little bit, but I think we need to see more, and especially if they're having people pay subscriber perks, they need to get someone that, if it's not Lando, like if Lando's not gameplay inclined, they need to get someone that like a former developer that knows this stuff, and then just go in, can look at it and say, oh, they're doing this, this, and this. Someone they can just bring up to speed, and he just works with Lando, and him and Lando just talk, and he explains to Lando how the gameplay mechanics work about Star Citizen. That would be really interesting, because then Disco could play dumb, so to speak, and the other person can tell him all the shit. And Disco does play dumb a lot to pull information out of the developers, so that's not an unnatural thing, and that way you're not taking away from the developers, but that one person would be like a developer that's just for us, if that makes sense.
Well, along those lines, they always open up with this community thing, and we talked about this earlier. Stop wasting time on the small videos, but still give us that. Why don't you just toss that on to Wednesday or Tuesday?
Citizen of the Stars? Where the hell did that go? You know, if you're such big into this community stuff, then have the community show, because you'll have the people that watch that want to watch it, and then you'll have the people like me that won't watch it. You know, and then that way everyone's happy. I think the last one that I can think of is basically... Actually, we've got two more here.
Bring back Calling All Devs.
Yeah, the Calling All Devs. We did talk about this earlier at the start of the show. It was one of the best things for us personally, because we actually got more information from that than any other show, because it was like a rapid-fire question thing. When you get something like RTV, you get one or two people and you got really concentrated questions, and unfortunately... they do a bit of time wasting, and they like to have fun with RTV, and that's totally fine, but they just don't get as much shit answered. It's not as to the point. And I think most people would agree, I would rather sit and watch Calling All Devs for, what was it, 10, 15 minutes at most, or watch an hour show that has a lot of fart-assing through it. And to put it bluntly,
the hour show is great, but you don't get the... Sorry.
I was going to say, but then you get someone like Board Gamer that just comes along and compresses it into 10 minutes, and people go watch that instead. So you don't get the viewers, and you've kind of wasted all that time. That's all I was going to say. Go for it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I actually disagree about the length of content. I actually think that playing around actually humanizes the devs. My only complaint with it is really down to the fact that you don't get a broad selection of questions, which you got with the other. I think the length and them playing around isn't the issue.
Yeah. The other part of it for me is a lot of the time they truncate or change questions or push questions together or totally change the meaning of a question. That's my other concern. But I think that happens in the other one as well. I really wish a lot of the questions were, like I said, if there was a developer person that was brought up just to work with the community, and that person could go get generally asked questions answered. I've said this for ages. I remember saying this back to Sandy on Star Signal years ago. I said it'd be really cool if there was a community made but run by CIG FAQ where you could type in a question and it pulls out tags out of that search, and then it brings up all the content, and we have officially answered questions. So you don't get people like, I remember when he did 10 for the chairman, and every 3 months you'd see the same question come back up and around, right? Because someone was not too lazy, but there was just too much information for them to sift through on Spectrum to find an answer to that question. And I just think there's just not enough tools being put in place. Can you imagine if you and I went out right now and tried to make an FAQ for Star Citizen? Like, it's just so many questions. It's got to the point now where it's a behemoth. But if you had a community team, like they have the moderators, if you actually had a whole bunch of people that were really dedicated to that, it'd almost be like duplicating the issue council, but turning it into an FAQ. You could use the same system.
That would be rather interesting.
You could use the same system to build it. Anyway, have you got anything else to add before we wrap up?
I think that's about it. It's really just give us the content for the subscriber money and it will come in. Because right now, Rec, not interesting, and all the other stuff is really not interesting. And the Flare is actually kind of meh lately.
Flares are easy too. They're all just reskins. Even like the one I'm thinking of is the ones that came at the end of last year. They had a blue one and a red one for Imperia or the whatever the other one's called, and they were just red and blue, and they were exactly the same. Then they had a different clothing for each, but they were cool, and they were some of the most popular flare they've ever done. And then they get around to January and they do the same skin again, but in rust.
Well, the thing is with that, and I just want to add, I would much rather see some unique stuff like around Spectrum. If you remember the like that Star Kitten helmet, or the
they're only for devs.
Samurai helmet.
They are only for devs. I've ran into a few devs at different events. They are exclusive dev items. I asked him how I could get one. He said, "Yeah, you have to come and dev." I'm like, but anyway, alright, so I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts and suggestions on how CIG can fix this? What shows would you like to see? I also want to know, are we completely off base here? Are we, like, do you not see what we're seeing? And a lot of that is going to be because, we actually forgot to mention this, I just realised, is because this year is going into the final stretch of development for Squadron 42, they are going to be bug fixing, and especially when they go in the alpha and beta mode, so, you know, the end of this year, they are going to be concentrating on fixing and doing a lot of Squadron 42 stuff, so we're not going to see a lot of stuff start to flow over to Star Citizen because it's just not needed, because they're finalising and fixing, and so we're going to see this drought period where we just don't see anything. And then again, the closer it gets to being fixed, they'll show less and less because they want it all to be a surprise. So I think, as news goes, this is going to be the driest year we've ever seen. And I probably should have started the show with that, not ended. But hey, that's what you're here for. So yeah, also, yeah, if you want to jump on the Discord and talk to us, feel free, because I like, this is a topic we've been talking about for years. Like I always say to these guys, I saw this coming. But yeah, so tell us what you guys think. Get back to us. Love to hear from you. Again, like this video if you liked it, and yeah, jump on the Discord. Anything else you want to add, Dasein?
Again, we read your comments. Just please put them down below. We may not respond all the time, but we do read them. We've just been busy lately, so...
I replied all of them. Most of them are replied to by me, but anyway. Yeah, so like this video if you liked it. If you didn't dislike it, that's fine by me. Alright, he's been Mr. Dasein. I've been Mr. Execute. We'll catch you guys next time. I need air conditioning. It is so hot.